Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Code with Sally. I'm happy to have you today with me. Today is the last session before our summer break. We'll go back again on 21st of August. So it's a good chance now, if you didn't review the videos or you were not part of the sessions all along the way, I would encourage you explore the topics we have. Most of the topics we have at the end, homework, exercise, suggestion, to have hands-on experience, like to play around the concepts we explained. So I would encourage you to go through the YouTube, scan the topics that you're good with, the topics that you want to learn more about, um, watch the video, implement the exercise, and come back with questions. During this break, if you have questions, definitely try to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Code with Stanley Slack, and I will do my best to support you during that period. If not, we'll cover it when I'm back from the break. So for anyone who's just joining us today or first time to watch the YouTube video, we have a Code with Sally session dedicated channel. You can find some playlists in English for English series, and we have others for Arabic. The two main series, or playlists you'll be looking at, would be the beginner and the intermediate. The beginner or the intermediate, both of them are sorted from oldest to newest, and I would encourage you to check them in that order. Because usually when we start a topic, we start small or start with simple concepts and we build on top of them. So the same for today. Like if someone is watching this video today, make sure you watch the Invocable Methods part 1 first, because we will be building on top of that. But if not, and you are attending live, feel free to stop me anytime, and I will do my best to answer you to the extent that you are following with us today. And later on, you can watch the part 1 whenever you have a chance. So today, we'll be continuing our discussion about invocable methods. Last time we checked together where invocable method fit within the session topics, and we were talking since we started the intermediate series about asynchronous Apex and its type of how we can invoke or access Apex code in the same invocable method. It's one of the way how we'll be invoking our Apex code. And we discussed last time the simple logic for it, and we built together this assign category action. And we saw how we add it seems like a normal utility method because it's within a class, it's public static. The difference is that we have invocable annotation at the top, and we have to pass a list and return a list. And we explain together the reason around that is that the list here is part of the bulkification, and we demonstrated together by calling this from the record trigger flow that we created. And we saw together in our debug statement how this list will have multiple IDs when we try to create multiple records or multiple cases at once from the developer console. So this is where we ended last time. We didn't get the chance to write the unit test classes or the unit test class for the assigned category action. So I will start with that. And the reason why is I like to stress every time we write a new piece of code, how we write the unit test class or method for it properly. Because sometimes people think, okay, it's invocable method, someone will be testing it because they will be testing their flow. Again, yes, they will be testing this when they are testing the flow, but there is very important reason why you are testing, or you have to test it not just for code coverage. You have to take the time to test the different scenarios, different cases. And that's because when admins use it in the flow, they will use it as a black box. They don't know the scenarios. Like they don't know if, for example, you have an if statement like here, they don't know that you have an else statement that will like assign general, or if the subject is null, it will assign uncategorized. Maybe the requirements of the user story will have such details, but sometimes it doesn't have all the details, or it doesn't have all the checks, or it doesn't have all the conditions that you added while you're implementing your scenario. And the only person who knows what is inside your class and method will be you, because you are the one who wrote it and implemented this. So it's very important to make sure that you are writing a proper unit testing, because admins will treat it as a black box. But for you, you know all the details and all the steps and every conditions you are covering. So it's very important to cover all of them in your unit test classes or your unit test method and the test class you are writing for it. So again, as we said, like, because you know the in and out of your class, you'll be testing and covering different scenarios and different edge cases. And you will ensure that the code will act the way you want it in all the scenarios by using the assert statements and covering all the edge cases and all the scenarios. And that's very important. Um, in other way, definitely when we always say, like, it's not the main target that we do code coverage, but when you have a good testing scenarios or test coverage, like not test coverage, it's the wrong word to use it, but different test scenarios, and you're testing all the scenarios, edge cases, all the if and else, all the exceptions, everything is covered, and you have test scenarios for it in your unit test class. That will lead to more code coverage. So it will serve the purpose that you want. So it's very important. We'll try not to spend too much time on this because we have a lot to cover. And we said, like, we'll leave it as a homework and for you guys to try to write the unit test class and compare it to what we have. So we'll spend some time now, write the, like, some scenarios, and I will leave you the full test class that I wrote myself in GitHub for you to test or to check. In general, for anyone who's joining you or forgot how to write the unit test class, we have the annotation as is test to mark it that it's a special type of classes that have test methods and to be ignored by Salesforce when they are calculating how much you have covered in your code and how much code you tested, because you won't be writing a test class for your test class itself. So here we always said, like, the skeleton that we have is for usually the set of data method to set up your data. If you have same records, we'll be creating, and then you start your test methods. And for each test method, we usually have inside create data if needed, and then we run the code we want to test. And then finally, we do the asserts to check. So this is what we will do first. For me, I want to start setting up the data. So the data here, what I want to set up is I want to create cases, because this is what will be sending IDs for the test for the invocable method. We are passing case IDs, and based on the check and checking the category and the values for the subject, we return what's the category. And again, this, as we mentioned, is a very simple scenario. You could have done all of that in the flow, but the purpose was not to create a very complex scenario for you to test or to play with. It was more to understand the concept of the invocable methods and what means bulkification when we are dealing with record trigger flows, and how the flow will pass or aggregate different IDs and pass it. So that's why we chose a very simple scenario to implement, and we'll be running the test class for it. So for the test setup, I want to create cases. So what will happen is I create a list, and I can move this method or the creation of the cases. I can create it in test data factory, and that to make it accessible through different test classes for this demo, we'll keep it here. So we have it in one class file, but it's better to move it to test data factory. What I would do here, I would create multiple cases, and you notice that I did one in billing, one technical, one with the login, one with the password, one with general, and one as empty. And that's because I want to prepare to use cases I have here in the category. And that's where like you have the knowledge because you have here, even for the authentication, I have a check if I have login or password. So the admin won't be able to see that unless they open the test, the class itself and check the code. But not all the admins have the knowledge to do that and open and spend the time reading the code. It's more the developer job. So that's why like, you know what you have, and that's why we are creating. Let's create the first test method, and I'll show you a couple of them, and then I will leave it to you. So here, like prepare the data, like create or prepare. So I want to access the data that I want. So here I will be dealing with the scenario where I have a case with a billing. So I'm writing a SO call to retrieve me a case with a billing subject that has a billing in it. I prepare the list of IDs, and that's because the invocable method will take a list of IDs, and I will do the act or run the code that I want to test. So I'm calling the assign category action, the assign category, and I pass the list of IDs. Here, in that case, I have a single ID. And then I would do an assert. The result should have one because I passed one ID, and I would be checking that it's billing. And we can do the same for like login, for everything else. One important thing that I would say, like it's very important to test. If you remember, and we checked an example together last time, that the order of the result may impact how the flow will distribute the values. In other words, like if you are returning a list of category value strings, it should match the IDs that you pass, like the order for them. Like the first ID and the first category is the first string of category returned is for the first ID that you pass. And that's why, like we explained here, when we are working through the for each here, we are looping through the list of IDs to make sure that when we get the category, we are getting the category for the specific ID. So one scenario that you should be testing or taking care of that your code is working fine is to you can rely on the cases that you created or create other ones. Like we are creating one, we know the first is billing, second is technical, the third will be authentication, and the fourth is general. So, and I create a list of IDs with those cases IDs, and I pass it to my assigned category. And then I know I pass 4 IDs, I should return 4 categories. And then because the order must match, so I know the first ID was for the first case, which is billing. So I would be checking that the first is billing, second is technical, and so on. It's very important to check that your code is returning the records in the right order. And that's something, again, if an admin is testing, they may be testing for cases with the same type of, like some of them are password and some of them has a title of login, and the result will be always authentication. It's not a like real stress test to make sure that the order matters and you return the order correctly. So again, that's why you as a developer, you know that the order matters and you want to make sure that your code kept the order correct for the data that return back from the method to match the order of the IDs that you passed. And that's why, for example, you would do such scenario. Are those only the scenarios that you can do? No, there is more scenarios because you should be testing. We did billing. You should be testing technical. You should be testing if you have a login and password or password. You have to test. We tested like the general. Now you can have testing the uncategorized or like that you don't have a subject. So yes, here we tested like a couple of them. in one scenario, but you may have specific scenarios for them if you want to, and uncategorized as well. So you can add more test scenarios and test methods if you want. I be like, for the sake of the time, if no one has a question, I pause the testing here, but let's run the test scenarios to make sure like the two test methods we created are passing successfully. So yes, here it said it passed. So it worked, no issues. And my two methods passed with no exception, and the asserts passed as well. I will leave it for you. Like I will have the full methods or the full class that I wrote offline on GitHub. My advice is try yourself to think about the different scenarios, write your assert statements, your test methods, and compare what I have with what you have. There is no right or wrong. Both will be right as long as it's passing and the asserts are correct. But take an idea, like if I added more scenarios that you didn't, and let me know as well if you added more scenarios that maybe I didn't cover. So it's a good way to like train yourself on writing unit test classes. So that will conclude the scenario that we covered last time, where we introduced the first example for writing invocable methods, passing. We wanted to pass from the flow, and we saw together when we created the flow, we are passing a single ID, and we explained together that we are passing it as a list because it's called from the record trigger flow, and that's part of the invocable methods rules that you have to pass a list. And that's because they wanted to make it record trigger flow proof, safe proof. So if you call it from a record trigger flow with multiple records, the engine in the background will take all the inputs and will put it in a list and call your method. So you always have to have this list for bulkification, even if your invocable method won't be called from a record trigger flow. But it's a requirement from Salesforce, and it's a rule we have to follow. Otherwise, we saw together last time when we tried to remove the list and pass an ID, we got an exception. We couldn't save our invocable methods. Don't forget, it's very important to play with the unit test class. Try to write it and compare it to what we have. Now we want to expand. Like I covered this already. Like why invocable methods must always accept a list. And let me try, like if someone didn't join last time, if I try to name this as case ID to pass a case ID, and I comment all the code, for example, here. Let's see, I have here this one, 2, and I will define this one outside. So I'm just commenting everything to show you what I mean of the error. So I will comment here, and I will try to save. It should give me an error and doesn't allow me to save. Let's see the error. So the error says like unsupported parameter type ID. Valid invocable parameters must be a list. It has to be a list of the acceptable types or supported types. Acceptable or supported types will be primitive data types, or list of list, or list of custom Apex or wrapper class. So that's why, like, it's a rule from Salesforce to pass. The reason why, like, I know it's a rule and we have to follow, but it's very good to understand why, and it will help you design and decide the input parameters of your invocable methods as well along the way. So here, I'm telling you, like invocable methods needs to have always the list, because you may be calling the invocable method from prompt template, or you can be calling it from Autolaunched flow, or you can be calling it from screen flow. But it's an option that you can call it from a record trigger flow. So Salesforce doesn't know when you are creating and defining a method as invocable method that it will be called from record trigger flow or from a screen flow or from a prompt template. So that's why Salesforce is enforcing this, because when it's called from the record trigger flow, Salesforce can aggregate different IDs or different values that each of the flows will be passing and collected in a list and pass it for you, as we did last time. And we saw it together in the example. So Salesforce may be passing one or many records. You cannot control that. It's happening whenever you insert or update multiple records at the same time in the same transaction. It will be a list and Salesforce will pass many records. So that's why you have to think about it, that it can, or it will always it must have always a list passed along the way. So the same, like if you worked with us on the triggers, I like to compare it to triggers. When we work on triggers, we use trigger.new or trigger.old, and this is a list. Why it's not a single record? It's the same. It's bulkification, because when you insert the bulk of record together in the same transaction, trigger.new will have a list of records in that case. So that's why, like, the same as trigger.new, it will be a list. The input parameters of the invocable method and the return type for it will be a list to support bulkification the same way as the triggers. If like we have a return type and it's not void, it will be a list. And we saw like the order and the number, like you cannot be passing a list of IDs that has 3 input parameters and you return 2 strings, a list of strings that has only 2. The number should match. You pass 3, you will return 3, and the order should match so you don't get errors. So this is why Salesforce is enforcing the list. Does that mean I cannot pass a list then? Like last time we saw in the flow, we were passing the record trigger ID. But what if, for example, if you remember last time we saw this screen flow together, where I will add like here different countries, and I will be passing a list of strings to an invocable method to go get the details of those countries from the country API that we have been using in our examples. And it will go get the API results and display it to me in the UI. So we pass 2 strings in a list and we return 2 details of those countries and we display them on the screen flow. So yes, we can pass a list, but like we saw together when we wanted to pass a single ID, we wrapped it around in a list, like a list of ID. And we explained that this list is not because I want to pass multiple IDs. It's more because it's for bulkification in case of the invocable method. It's called from record trigger flow. So now if we want to pass to serve our example here that I'll be passing a list of country names, how we can pass it? The target we want to pass a list of strings. So the country names. So can we pass directly a list of string like that? The answer would be no, because when I pass this the way we have now, list of string, that means this list is for bulkification and the flow is allowed to pass a single value only. And we'll show it today again to make it like more clear. But can I do that? The answer is no. So what can we do then? You want to pass a list of string, then wrap it inside another list. So you'll be passing a list of string. The inner list of string is actually the data type you want. So this was string. I want it now to be a list of string. And again, we'll wrap it in a list for the bulkification in case the same invocable method is called from record trigger flow. That's very important. So that's why, like, let's see examples together. If I want to pass an ID, I'll make it as a list of ID. The list that we wrap the ID in is for bulkification. Again, if I want to pass a list of string, then I'll be having the data type I want, but I will wrap it inside another list. And the other list, this is for bulkification. List of case, I will make it like that's a list of as object, a list of case. So I wrap it inside another list as well. The first list is for bulkification, then my data type. Can I pass also like a wrapper class? I want to pass a wrapper class that has student name and student age, for example. Yes, that's possible, but I cannot pass it as an object from this class directly. I have to pass it within a list. So the first list you will always have is the list for your bulkification. And that's very important. And let's see it together in action in a very simple example. I know today we wanted to build this flow together, but when I thought about it, I think it's very important to understand and see the differences when we wrap it in a list or pass list of list, or when we pass a custom Apex data type, how it will behave and how you will be able to see the difference in the flow first. And then it depends on the time, whether we'll be doing this flow together or I will give you a hint on how to do it and I can show you my flow and I will leave it for you as a homework to do it during the break. And we can decide together whether you want to, like we explain it when we come back, or you want just to move forward and go to the prompt template and how to use invocable methods from there. So we'll decide together by the end of the session by how far we'll go. But for now, let's open. I have prepared like a very simple class. I removed the code from it, so we'll be working on it. Let me refresh. So testing flow, let's close other tabs. This one, like the first we'll try, we'll want the first case, we want to pass a string, pass from flow a string, and return a string. So in general, what you'll be doing, you'll be doing public static. If you are doing a utility method, like you're not doing now an invocable method, what you would do public static string, and you will do here example method, one string, and that's just to make it different. And I would do here string and input. And I can return here hello. So that's in case you are doing a simple method. But now we want it to be an invocable method. What we'll be doing, first of all, we'll add at the top the annotation to be invocable method, and we'll use the modifiers here like to specify a label, and I will add it in a category called _testing to ease our way of testing it or finding it within the scenarios we are building. Now, see, it's complaining that we cannot pass in a string. What we would be doing in that case, we'll be wrapping this, as we said, in a list. But we know that here, it's as if I'm passing in one string. And the return type as well will be a string. But I know that this will return actually one string. And here I have to wrap this in a list, new list, string, and I will wrap this value for now here. Okay, so I know that I'm be passing, yeah, sorry, return new. And let's make it even, like, because we don't want to hard code it now, I will make it an empty list. We are not testing, we are not using it like to see the output. We'll see how it looks when we are using it. Let me go to the flow and I'll create an auto-launch flow because we are not actually saving the flow. I want you to see the differences when we change. So here I will add an action. And see, I have created this within the testing category, so it's easier. And I did the underscore, so we see it at the top. And here, my method is test passing one string. Here, what we can do to test it. Let's try to create a new resource. And I will test here variable. Someone may get confused and say, okay, this will accept a list of string. So let's try and do that. I do a variable. I do here list of string. And I will say it's text and multiple values. So here I created a variable of type text. So it's string and allow multiple values. So that's the list. See here, when I added the string, list of string, it says what? The data type of the resource you entered isn't compatible. And the reason why? Because this list is for bulkification, but actually the type that the flow can send is a single string. So let's go again here and create another resource that will is a single string. So I do here variable and I will do one string. And it's a text. I won't mark it as allow multiple. Now, when I chose this one, no issues. It can be used. And you see this one is one string, is a single value. This is a list of strings. So that's the first case. And that mimics what we did last time. We had a list of IDs, but within the flow, we were passing the record that is record trigger flow is firing, and we passed its ID. So it was one ID. So that's kind of the similar use case, but we are passing here a string instead. Let's say here, I want another one. I want to pass a list of string and return a list of string. So again, if it's easier for you, start like that. I want to return a list of string, and I will say example, method list string. And I put here that I passed a list of string values. And I return here a list of string. So here I treated this as a utility method. It saved no issues. Let's go get the first line where I will define that it's invocable method. I say it's invocable method. I will say I'm passing a list of string. I put it in testing to be able to see it. And I named it that way. Now, if I try to save it, it won't give me an error, but it's misleading. Like if you go and refresh and you try to use it, it will be behaving the same way as the previous one. You will be able only to pass a single value. If you want to pass it, what you need to do is you need to wrap this type in another list for bulkification. So it accepts a list of string and return a list of strings. Make sense? And I return that. So I created a list of strings and not this one, sorry. I copied something wrong. Okay, so and we can have only, I can make it easy for us now, and like I want to return a list of strings. So for each list, I will return a single value. It doesn't have to be as well a list of string. Like for the first input of list of string, I will return the concatenation value for them. The second one, the same. So it just, so you don't get the impression that you need to have like matching data type. You don't, it's up to you. So let's keep it that way so no one get confused. So now I'm passing a list of string. Let's refresh the flow and try to use it. And remember here, when we had a list of string only, we were able to use the one string and not the list of string parameter. Testing invocable methods. And I will save that. I refresh. And let's remove this method, delete, and this action, and I will add another one, action. I go to testing. Now it sees the list of string. And again, I don't see the other one because I commented the other one, and I commented the other one because we can have only one invocable method per class. We cannot have multiple. So let's go now and see if I use this one. Yeah, I still have here in my resources a list and one string. Let's try the one string. I don't see it. See, it's not available for me because the method is expecting a list of string. So now I can pass the list of string to this method because it's expecting a list of string, but I'm wrapping it in another list just for the sake of bulkification. Any questions so far?
All right, Sally, this is Conrad. Okay, what you're saying makes sense. However, okay, you explain the bulkification, so you have a list of a list of strings.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're also showing that you can only have one invocable method per class.
Correct.
But the only way I know that is because you just told me. So where is this documented, or how is it that you're learning all this and I know nothing about
It,
it?
first of all, like if you try even like to create, let's say I forgot about this rule and try to save now, it would tell me only one method per type can be defined with invocable method. Like you cannot have more. Second, like I get this from the documentation. Um, See here, only one method in class can have one invocable method annotation. That's the documentation of Salesforce, the invocable methods. Um, and the same for the input and output. For example, here it will tell you it can be at most one input parameter. So last time we tried like to pass the second parameter, we couldn't. It gave us an error. It's just one input parameter, and it can be a list of primitive or a list of S object or a list of the S object generic type or a list of a wrapper class or custom Apex.
Okay.
Make sense? So
Yes.
it's everything most probably we don't know about, or like here, like the modifiers that the same I'm using, the label, description, the category, I can name all of that. It's in the documentation. The problem is, and that's including myself, at some stage of my life, I felt overwhelmed when I opened the documentation of Salesforce and I don't take my time reading it. But with time, I noticed that everything is here. Maybe sometimes some of them, like we saw last time, or we'll see it at some point. Here, there is a small word here that tells me I can use the invocable method from REST. And I will show it to you guys in one session how we can use Workbench and access our invocable method as a REST API. So sometimes words cannot be very clear, but everything is in documentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're all. But is it clear, like why here we have a list of lists? It's very important.
Well, when you explain it, it's clear.
Okay.
Uh, like you say, when I look at the documentation right now, I do get overwhelmed, but I have to, I guess, be more meticulous.
That's why, like, if you go back to the first videos, even for the beginner sessions, I always refer to documentation because the more we get used to reading it or checking and figuring out where the information we want to find is in the documentation, the easier it will get. And the same for me, like the more I use it and the more I read it, I find more details that I would love to know about, but I didn't know about because I didn't read it in depth. But that's why, like, questions sometimes it takes me to documentation to read, or the session we try to like give you more information and explain it in easier way. And that will make it easier for you now to read the documentation when you read it. Okay. One thing now, like if, for example, and that's my preferred way of passing and sending. I find it a bit hard when you have a list of string to read it. Like I feel it's a bit harder for us to read and understand what we are trying to pass or receive. So what I like to introduce you is the third case and passing a wrapper class. And there is a benefit of doing that. I will show you here something like here. We had this as list of values, and we had the parameter or the label of the input when we had this list of string. Even though it's a single string, we were seeing on the flow that it's expecting me to enter inputs. So the name can be hard to understand or it can be confusing. So what I like to do is I like to use wrapper classes when I'm dealing with invocable methods. So again, let's assume I'm doing this public static and I will return a list of string and example method custom apex. That's what we want to pass. And let's say here, I will define an apex class. I will name it custom apex type. And I'll give here one value as a string value. And I can have another one as a list of strings. So the benefit of using a wrapper class would be that I can pass here custom apex value. I can pass multiple parameters from the flow now, and I will show you something else that makes it more interesting. So let's try to save now. This is as a utility method. I'm good to go. Like I want to return a list, sorry. If it's a utility, I want to return a string and I'm passing an object from my custom Apex class. Now I want it to be an invocable method. What I'll be doing, again, I'll be passing here or adding the annotation for the invocable method, label category. By the way, those are like optional. You don't have to put a category just for me for easier to find. Now, again, if I try to save, it will complain because I don't have a list. I have a wrapper. So one of the types that are allowed is to pass a list of user-defined type, and that means a user-defined Apex type, which is a class, custom class. So I have to wrap this in a list for the bulkification, and I will return a list. It's a string, but I will wrap it in a list for bulkification too. So now I can save this. Does not show a parameter type of list. Line 16. Invocable method. That's not. Okay. So I know the reason. Most probably because I didn't mark those as invocable methods, invocable variables. So let's do those now. I will define that at least one of them, that's my mistake. At least one of them needs to be invocable variable. And that's to tell, see, when I remove it, now it complains because nothing is marked like as invocable variable in the class. The class needs to have at least one invocable variable. This invocable variable alone will be accessible through the flow now. Let's see it, and then let's add the other one. So I will refresh, and I will remove this one, add another action. And here, see string value. and you'll notice that it's taking this value, the name of this variable, string value. So that's why it was complaining, because I didn't have any invocable variables. So if I try to add the other one now, and I will try to refresh and include it again, I can say action, test, and I will see here now, see what are the inputs now. A list of string values and a string value. And that's because I have two invocable variables that I exposed for the invocable method and the flow to be able to use it. So that's very important, because sometimes we are in impression that we can pass single value. In a way, it's a yes, but if you have a list of custom Apex type, now you can pass more than one value. So you can pass string value and list of string values. Okay, one thing, like, and again, you can find this invocable variable in Salesforce annotation. It's more explaining the invocable variables, and it will explain in depth the modifiers, like what are the modifiers between brackets that you can pass, and some details about them. So I would encourage you to check them, but let's try to see the benefit of having them. So I will add here, for this one, for example, I'll give it a name that I want in this, the country name, and I'll put a placeholder to explain to user, please enter here the country name, and I wanted to make it required. By the way, see here, nothing is required. Like, the user may choose not to pass values. It's not required. Nothing is forcing it to be required. So that, in my opinion, that's the most important thing by using the wrapper, other than passing different values. The label is nice because you can give it a user-friendly name, because usually we name those, like, even if I put this as country name, like this for me within the code, like for the user, maybe they would love to have a user-friendly name with capital letters, spaces in between. So the label is useful for them. And the other one is required. And let's try a couple of them. I take them, copy, and I paste them here. So we'll have here another one. I have another string to value, and I will use the default value, for example, and this is not required. Third one, I will not use the modifiers, which are useful, but I chose not to. So I will have here, and maybe here, last name, name value, for example. And the third one is a list, or the fourth, and I will say a list of strings, or a list of country names. Let's save and see how I can access those on the flow now. Let's refresh. Delete element, and I will add an action. Testing, this one. See the country name, because I marked it as required. It's the only one that shows that I have to enter a value or select a resource. So it's forcing me, and it's marking it as required. And see here, please enter here the country name. So this is the placeholder that I put here. And you'll find the same if anyone worked with LWCs. Sometimes we put placeholders in inputs when we render, like in the HTML. And when we render, the user see this placeholder. And here, I don't see country name one word, like with no spaces. I see the friendly username, like the country name. Here, string value 3, because I don't have value, a label for it. It didn't show me a nice user-friendly. Same, last name value. That's the one that we did here. We see the label, and it's using the default value. So if I don't replace it, it's included with a default value. It will be passing this default value. Here, list of string names. So it's showing the label that we chose, and it will accept only here a list of string. Like, it won't accept a single value because it's a list. So in my opinion, And it's really up to you. Like, even if you have a use case where you will be passing a list of string, yes, you can do it in that way. But I see that passing a custom Apex type and have in the Apex type like a single list of value will be more user friendly, because you can replace here if you pass it, like if you use list of list, and for the user they will see that you want list of values, but here you can choose that you want to pass a list of country names, explain it, place a placeholder, make it required. So using the modifiers are available when you use the custom Apex type. So I find it useful in that terms. And by the way, the custom Apex type is not just for the input, as well for the output. Like, you can have a list of custom Apex. And that's when, for example, when we work on the example we have here for the flows, we collect the data from the API. Then, like, we want to return country name, capital, region, flag URL. So we want for each country return custom defined Apex that has those parameters that we want to pass. So that's what, like, the preference that I would suggest that you do, and the benefit of having invocable variables and their modifiers. So this is, I hope this example like explained to you the differences like between passing a single string or like a list of string or passing an Apex type. I wanted to show you without like a very complete scenario or like a record trigger flow or even like the screen flow. I wanted you to see like the different types or the different methods. And again, as an advice, in my opinion, as a homework as well, before even jumping to the list, the screen flow, try to create your own testing flow action. Try to create an auto launch flow. Play with it. If you want to use a record trigger flow, it's your choice. If you want screen flow, it's your choice too. It just, for me, it was useful or nice to keep refreshing the flow and keep changing the cases and see how that will impact the inputs that I can pass from the flow to Salesforce. And here, this one, I can pass one string. It's a single string. The list is a list. So in my opinion, it would be very useful for you to create something like that and try different scenarios in different cases and see how in your auto launch flow or any type of flow that you would choose, how those different types will behave differently. So you can see the um, differences and how it's behaving in each of them. Now, it would be super tight to do this together. So what I want to show you, like give you an idea on what I built, and I would love you to try and build something on your own. I can add for you the utility method for getting the country details because we used it before. You should have it from a previous session. And if you want to refresh your memory about like JSON, call out, and how we do it, check the second video or part 2 of future methods. This is where we implemented this get method for getting the details of the country from the API. I pass it for you. What you would need to do is you need to create an invocable method in a class that would accept a list of strings and return a custom list of Apex wrapper class. So here I have in my scenario, I think I removed the code so I can show you. But we have something like that. Let me try to get it for you. I don't want to put this for you on GitHub, but like we'll have a list of requests. In my case, I created the request details that takes a list of country names, the same way that we did, and you will return a list of country response details. Country response details will have the details of each of your countries, like the name or the flag URL. I can put for you the custom object as well on GitHub. Then you need to create your flow. I'll give you an idea. And again, Bassem and his Yalla Salesforce channel has good videos about flows. So you feel free to check it, and that will be good option to learn more about flows because, again, in the session, we are not explaining fully the flows together, but I have a screen flow. The screen flow have a repeater of country name, and then I looped through the repeater of the country name and I added them in a resource of country names is a list. It's a variable of type text that allow multiple, and I kept adding to it. Then I called the invocable method that we created and I passed the country names to it. This method will be using the utility that we created before to get the API and get me the details. The end goal is to show on the data table the country name, capital, region, flag, and so on. Because the return type will be an Apex define. In flows, as far as my knowledge, like you have two ways to do that, whether to show an LWC or if you have a custom object that has the same like fields, you can map the results of the list of Apex define list to records and then use that. And because we didn't explain yet LWCs, that's what I did. I mapped the list that we got to the country object that we had before created when we worked on this API. And then I used this in the display screen. I know it's a bit challenging, but we have a break for 3 weeks. So feel free to try and give it a go and see how it goes. And that's where like we learn different things. Like we learn how to pass a list of string from the flow, how we can use the utility for the callout that we built before, and that will show you a showcase that maybe you will have an API, an endpoint to use somewhere else, and you don't want to start all over implementing the same logic with HTTP callout or other functionality within the flow, but you want to reuse the utility method. So we want to use what we built before, and we'll return a list of custom wrapper. Along the way, while working with flows, we'll learn about the repeater, the loop, the assignment, the transformation, and the data table. And that's what we are using here. Screen with repeater and loop through it. We use the assignment to add in the list of countries. And then we got the invocable method. We did the transformation to change the Apex type, the list of Apex type, to a list of records of type country. And then we used it in a data table here to show it. So try your best. And now I will ask like for votes. Do you want next time when we come back, we'll start again on the 21st of August. Do you like that we use the 21st of August to implement this from scratch together? Most probably you take the session. Or do you prefer that we move on and see how we can use invocable methods from templates and Agentforce actions? Okay, Hildy, one vote for doing it from scratch together. Conrad?
Well, I would say well, when you lay out those options, I say, yeah, let's do both. Uh, I think they're both worthwhile. So I want to accept the challenge of trying to do it as homework, and then we'll see it. If you build the same thing I built.
Okay, that's great. So, okay, so then I think the majority is wanting to do it together, but I would encourage to take the path of Conrad. Try, stretch yourself and try as much as you can to do it on your own. And I'm not the flow expert. Like I asked Bassem for help and I did my best to do it. Maybe you'll tell me another way or a better way to do it. And maybe we can combine my solution to one of you solution and we get to a best solution at the end. So work on it, try to challenge yourself. I will put for you the object. I put for you the utility method for the HTTP request that you can reuse. Try yourself to replicate it and do it. And let's, on the 21st of August, then we'll be implementing this again from scratch together, the invocable method and the flow as well. So we'll work on it together on the 21st, and the session after will be our discussion about how to use invocable methods from prompt templates, and after that from Agentforce actions. So again, it's a good chance to um, like add to your knowledge what are prompt templates, what are Agentforce, attend the Agentforce Now sessions, watch Yalla Salesforce YouTube channel, learn more about flows. You have 3 weeks to like spend on watching old videos we have or to add to your knowledge about other areas. And I will see you on 21st of August. And thank you so much for coming today and attending and for watching the video offline if you are watching offline. And I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something new today. And I will see you on 21st of August.